All right, everybody, we are here. We're in the final two games of the playoff season here, and Joe will be with us in a little bit. I don't know where he's at, but we're ready to start, so let's kick it off. Fancy intros needed here from Joe. Coming off a big win for the Steelers yesterday. Here in Pittsburgh, the fans are buzzing. The weather was cold. We know that Tua cannot play in the cold, and that materialized yesterday. Joe's been talking about that for years. So I can only imagine how giddy you were, Joe, whenever Tua was just faltering and failing. And they even said he might not play this upcoming week. Your microphone is off. Your mic is off. Don't go on a monologue like last time. Don't go on a monologue like last time with your mic off. You know? All right, still can't hear you, but that's all right. I'll fix my end.
All right. One more time. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we are. There we are. Joe, tell me how you felt yesterday, feeling so vindicated about Tua in the cold weather. Tell me.
I mean, I have, 48 other data points to show this. This wasn't a new or thoughtful idea that the guy crumbles in the cold. Really, all of Miami does. One of the things I loved about that game, speaking about crumbling in the cold, was how Troy Aikman wasn't letting it go, how bad Daniels coached the end of that game. So that was insanely bad system. So the weather wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't call the weather a strong home field advantage, Nick. It's just what Northeast America is.
Well,
and if you're in the South, you ain't used to it. There's plenty of teams that are in, quite frankly, the SEC that cannot win in the North. And that is, Miami's just the most extreme example because they don't ever go below 70.
It feels like
there
a
are
coaching
plenty
thing
of teams
more
that
so
that's the case too.
Because if you think about it, though, like players play in different environments all the time, like when you're in college, etc. But like if your primary like games were played Southeast, you're not going to be able or prepared as much. But most fields, Heinz Field is definitely not one of them. But there are a lot of fields that are heated to a degree too. So sometimes
Heinz Field is heated. Heinz Field's heated. They just don't turn it on. They just don't turn it on during the game. There's a heater there. They just don't use it.
All right, guys. So we see a lot of people in the chat here. Some people made it to the next round. Some people made it to their consolation bracket. It happens. Joe did not make it in our home league, but he was able to eke out a win.
The other one.
In the Axe Throwing League, I was able to eke out a win in my home league as well. Moving on to the next round, so it feels good. So let's start the show talking about defenses here, guys. Because it is proving that these defenses that can score points and generate points and stop and make turnovers are going to be very valuable here for the stretch run. So the question with Jesse here that we're going to start with before we get into the deep dives a little bit later in the show is, would you guys start the Texans defense, or which defense has an opportunity to score a bunch of points this week? And the reason I'm pairing this up is that Steve, a little bit later here, said that the Bucs defense played like trash. They absolutely did. And wanting to know if the Vikings, Giants, Falcons, Jets, Lions, Panthers, or Ravens are worth a pickup. So I'm going to start this by saying that, yes, I do always like the Texans defense. And if I have the Texans defense, I am going to start them this week. There is nothing about the Raiders that scares me any one bit. And one of the things that I would be cautious
the Raiders equal scoring points on defense.
What I would caution
that's who you want to go against.
What I would caution you with is just in the fact that depending upon how your league scores, I think sacks are going to be the thing that you're probably going to bank a lot of points on this week against the Raiders if you have the Texans. And there's a good chance for a pick or two of whoever plays at quarterback between Geno or Kenny Pickett. But I'm not sitting the Houston Texans defense. They have one of the best matchups on the slate. There's no reason to be scared. And like I said last week, if a team can generate pressure against whether it's Geno or Kenny Pickett, that is going to be a team that I want to take advantage of. Now, going here to Steve's question about the defenses, insofar as which defense is worth picking up, we have the Vikings, the Giants, the Falcons, the Jets, the Lions, Panthers, and Ravens. Now, the one thing that needs to be said here, Joe, is that while the offense of the Vikings can have some ebbs and flows, it seems like the defense overperforming to a higher degree. They just lost Jonathan Greenard. He went out with an injury. He's not going to be playing this week. But in your mind, is that loss enough to make you not want to start the Minnesota Vikings defense against New York, who can get a decent amount of turnovers against them? Or are you going in a different direction using one of these defenses that is up here? What are your thoughts?
So let's start with the key process here in the beginning. We saw it last night with Tua, and we've seen it in a lot of different places. This is the season of quitting. No doubt, this is where we do in Cancun on 3, ready, break. And we're seeing it with the Jets. We're certainly seeing it with Miami. What your real question is coming down to is, are teams that are out of the playoffs going to implicitly throw in the towel? Like the Vikings are an example of this. I'm talking about the offenses right now. Then I'll dive into the defense. The Vikings are an example. Are they phoning it in? No, just McCarthy might just be that bad. Miami and the Jets, they're phoning it in. The Raiders, 100%. Cleveland, as long as Shador's on the field, they're phoning it in. And by the way, I want to talk about that at some point, guys. So when I see a defense that is immensely talented, Houston, playing a team that is phoning it in, the Raiders, that's the no doubt obvious. Now, for your question with the Bucs are in that rare state of just pure desperation mode. Yeah, injuries are getting them. Injuries get to everyone, right? But Tampa this week, getting the vision effectively is coming down to those 2 games against Carolina. And I still don't love Bryce Young. And I still think that he's incredibly overrated. But when you look at some of these other options that are playing the Jets, the Raiders, there's more of them. I'm blanking on them right now that have just.
Here's what I want to say, Steve.
I'm thinking the one that's quit the most. So that would be the Jets or the Raiders. Anyone who's playing them gets the win.
So that's kind of the idea here, right? Is that when we look at these teams, I think it's also important to say this from the other narrative perspective, right? Is that if you are still in it, you are going to play your lights out both on offense and on defense. So one of the teams that I do like this weekend defensively would be Carolina. The reason why is that Baker Mayfield has not been playing well. Yes, there are most likely going to be yards to Mike Evans. Yes, there's going to be yards for Bucky Irving. But my question is, how many points are actually going to be scored in these games? When we look at Carolina's games over the last several weeks, right, the scoring in these games really ebbs and flows depending upon the teams that they're playing. It's not like they're a world beater of a defense, though. They are going to give up points. The question is, will they get turnovers? And I think that you can generate some turnovers here against Tampa. The other fact remains is that the Jets are playing New Orleans. Both of these teams are out of the playoffs. Both of these teams are going to want to see what's going on. Are the Jets capable of making?
But New Orleans hasn't quit. That's my point. New Orleans is not one of these teams that's quit. I love it.
So when I look at these defenses, and Rumpel, you have right here as well, Vikings versus Giants or Eagles versus Commanders. The defense that I'm taking out of these two would definitely be the Eagles, because the Commanders, the only way the Commanders are going to score a boatload of points is if they come back in garbage time. Okay.
Yeah, here, let me give you guys my rankings for the defense, because I guess
for me, out of these two choices, it's definitely the Eagles. Out of the above choices that Steve put in front of us here, the two defenses that seem to make sense at this moment and time on that grouping of defenses is number 1, the Panthers, and number 2, the Ravens, because the Ravens have actually been playing a little bit better than they have been over the totality of the season, but those metrics and numbers won't necessarily tell you that. But if you look over the last 4 weeks, you're going to see a picture of a team that's playing much better. Now, are they facing a team that's much better? Yes, absolutely. But defensively, right, they have been playing better than they had previously. Again, they did lose 27-22 to the Steelers, and they did lose 32-14 to the Bengals. But when you look at the other teams that they played, there was a time where you could say that I want to start this defense. Would I want to start any of those defenses if I could avoid it? I wouldn't want to. But if I couldn't avoid it, I think that the choices I'd pick out of that grouping of players or out of that grouping of teams would be Panthers, Ravens, and probably Vikings, right? Because neither the Giants or the Vikings have anything to play for, but the Vikings defense is proving that they can get turnovers. They have been the top DFS team on defense in one of the weeks that we've had in the last 5 weeks. So I do think that you would be willing to throw your hat into the ring with the Vikings this week. But it all depends on what version of J.J. McCarthy you're going to get. If you're getting the version of J.J. McCarthy that's going to hold on to the ball a little bit, I think that the Vikings are a good play out of that grouping of players to play just because of Jackson Dart being injured. There's probably going to be a bunch of points scored in that game, but there are going to be some more potential for turnovers that you can get from the Vikings and that you could probably get from the Panthers and that you could probably get from the Ravens this week. So those are my 3 out of that grouping. I'd probably lean a little bit on the Vikings and the Panthers out of that grouping of players, Steve, or out of that grouping of defenses.
All right, let's get back to the calls, Bob. You're in charge of the button today.
Going back here, Steve, to your other question. So I have Kyle Pitts. Should I go with him this week and next, or pick up from the waivers Waller, Johnson, Barner, or Gadsden? So I think that Waller, we talked about Waller and Pitts last week, and we talked about Theo Johnson a little bit over the course of the year. I think what needs to be said about Waller is that he dominated the targets in that wide receiver room this past week.
And he dominated garbage time for sure.
And that wasn't necessarily a surprise. But what I hear from the coach saying is that Tua might get benched this week. And I question what will happen with the next up quarterback, Zach Wilson, with this offense. So while I don't think that Waller is a bad play, I think that I am a little bit more hesitant. But the matchup is incredible. One of the best ones on the slate, right? So you look at it and you say, well, that's worth investing in. And when you want to, if you're investing in tight end, you got to take the tight end that you think is going to have the most opportunities in the game. Now, the one thing about Pitts to be concerned about is the prospect of Drake London playing this week. If Drake London plays this week, you could see a possibility that those numbers might not be as good. But it's one of the best matchups on the slate from a fantasy points perspective for Kyle Pitts. And it's also right around where he gets with his averages with receptions. So I don't project that he's going to have, again, 11 receptions, 3 touchdowns, 100 yards.
No,
I do think Kyle Pitts, without Drake London, if Drake London is out, is probably going to be headed in that 4 for 70. If he's in, he's probably going to get like 3 for 50. So I think that Kyle Pitts is still going to have a good game. And those were the 2 that I would focus on. But I wouldn't necessarily have to make Waller a priority. But I also don't want Waller playing against me. So,
yeah, I definitely get the bandwagon of getting Waller on your roster. So I don't know if I want to cut Pitts to do it. Now, granted, all in line, I would give the tiebreaker to Pitts if London doesn't play because he has the extra time. However, there is something, as much as I completely do not respect Daniels, he is an offensive juggernaut. He is 100% trying to get the Raiders job, which means he has to show off that he can use a tight end. And if he can use a tight end with a completely subpar quarterback, which Wilson is at this point, I believe that that's what's going to get him the job in Vegas. And that's what this next 3 weeks is him on a job interview saying, I can use hours, and that's what's going to happen. Do you think this crazy genius of South Beach can use a tight end or not?
I would like to agree to disagree with you, Joe, from this perspective is that what we have said a couple weeks ago is that Waller has a high degree of value in the red zone. But over the last 2 weeks, Kyle Pitts has had that same amount of value. And if you project that over let's take, for example, if you say you were to project that over the last 8 weeks, right? Again, different quarterbacks, different situations. Kyle Pitts, 5 red zone tries, 3 reception touchdowns. And for me, that is worthy of a discussion, right? It's worthy that is something that I want to start. So I'm on Kyle Pitts this week. We can talk about it more tomorrow. But I think that Kyle Pitts is a great play this week.
Yeah, like I said, as long as London's out, I'm on Pitts as well.
Set my lineup this week, Jason. Quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, tight end, 2 flex. I'm on Brissett. Remember, the only reason that you guys were able to get me off Brissett was just the fact of the stats last week that a quarterback never threw for 3 touchdowns against them. Well, Jacoby Brissett bucked that trend. And I don't think it's reasonable to not go with Jacoby Brissett in a matchup that, while it's not the most incredible matchup on the slate for quarterbacks, right? It's one of those ones where Atlanta's not that good. They're offering 33 pass attempts. And if Jacoby Brissett is allowed 33 pass attempts at a floor, okay? He had 37 last week, 43, 36, 45. If you're giving him that much, and he could end up at 40, he could end up at 300 yards. Atlanta's up there at offering around 235 and passing yards and about 1.5 touchdowns per over the last 4 games to quarterbacks. But you can't sit Brissett. I know that it sounds weird, but you can't sit him this week when it comes to Brissett or Burrow. Coming out of this other pool of players for running back, I think that, first of all, I think that I really like Javonte Williams this week.
Well, actually, Bob, so you answered the hard part of this question. If you go through the whole thing when we start working out the flexes, the hard part was Brissett over Burrow. The rest of this actually becomes itself because you have to start all 3 of your running back or your receivers at receiver, assuming Sutton's out. Your next option then goes.
Why would Sutton be out?
Sutton took a shot at the end of that. You can look into it. He might not get a designation, but Sutton took a shot. But regardless, you're starting.
Now he's good.
Okay, Sutton's in for London. I'm reading that backwards. Yeah. You're starting Collins and Chase, no doubt. And if London's out, you're playing Sutton. So this is really going to come down to the debate of your 3 flexes. The end story is you're playing Barkley and Javonte. They're going to be in your lineup. And Kyron's in your lineup.
I was just gonna say that Barkley's matchup is incredible this week.
Yeah, facing off against this is going to come down to: are you playing Sutton or Amon-Ra and Hampton if London plays? Like that's the only real discussion with this lineup.
The question is, if London plays, then your question is, in your flex, are you playing Kyron, Hampton, Vidal, Sutton, or Terry?
You're definitely playing Kyron. You're definitely playing Kyron.
Well, I could give you reasons why you might not want to play Kyron. And it's reasonable.
I want to hear him because I don't see him right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's reasonable to say that Kyron will be a great play this week. Again, against Seattle, and the only thing that you kind of have to head on a swivel about with Seattle is that the opportunities are going to be there. There's going to be around 22 opportunities in this game. So over the last 4 games, they've allowed around 22 opportunities to running backs, okay? Not a lot, not heavy on the yardage. It's about league average, okay? The thing I worry about is the discrepancy between the carries between Corum and the carries between Kyron. So when we look at this, right, we see that it's very close to a 50-50 split. And if you give Kyron 12 carries and you're averaging about 79 yards given up a game, the one boon that I see to that is that maybe Haverstein could be back in the coming weeks. Maybe he's back this week. I don't see him coming back this Thursday. So there are some question marks to see with how many points on the ground that Kyron will actually generate.
So I want to do a pushback on that watching the Rams game.
A question about that.
My pushback on the Kyron Corum usage is that until the game became a 2-star game, it was basically all Kyron. The touchdown, he's going to get his touchdown first, and Corum will get the garbage time. I don't think you're getting garbage time.
I got you on that part. And that, I'm just saying, if you wanted to find a dink in that armor, then Kyron's absolutely would be playing for me. But I'm just giving you a reason.
You're not starting Sutton and Omarion over Kyron. I think that the biggest problem is Omarion or Sutton.
And then when you have Hampton or Vidal sitting there as potentially your other flex, you look at it and you're saying, well, similarly, how do we view this situation? Well, Dallas has only been offering around 17 attempts on the ground. Now, if you look at who Dallas has played over the last several games, that's Minnesota, Detroit, Kansas City, and Philly. When you go to that Detroit game week 14.
That's some running teams on that list.
Yeah, but listen, when you go to that Detroit game, they had 22 opportunities in that game. And across both of the running backs, that was 109 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had 3 touchdowns, right? So that is a little bit of a weird kind of metric to look at. But the one thing that I like about the rushing touchdown capacity is that because of that, their stats are a little bit conflated and a little bit inflated by that. Because you go back and then you look at Kansas City, that same game, Joe, or the week prior, and you had no touchdowns scored against them against Kansas City. And that makes a lot of sense. And then when they played Philly, prior to that, they did very good at stopping Saquon Barkley. So, I question if they're a team, if I want to roll out one of these Chargers players because the stats are inflated by that Jahmyr Gibbs 3 touchdown games. They've been holding those running backs to a paltry amount of yards from a fantasy perspective. So if I'm going to go with one of them, I'd probably lean Vidal if he gets the receptions. But he didn't get a lot of receptions last week. And then the week prior, they're not throwing the ball to the running back a lot.
They're not throwing the ball well.
Why I say this, though, is that I could convince myself that Sutton would be the guy that I would want to play over Hampton and over Vidal, because the matchup is not that good from that perspective that I was just saying with all those stats. So me personally, I'm on Brissett, Barkley, Javonte, Kyren. The 3 wide receivers that I would obviously start in those situations, Kittle, and then probably Sutton.
I see you coming down of the Sutton over Omarion. But that's, to me, like I said, Jason, the only real question with this.
And here's the other thing, Joe.
I'm a running back core. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to lead the running back. That's how I'm going with it.
In the last 4 games for Cortland, 8 targets, 6 targets, 10 targets, 10 targets. So I'm absolutely comfortable rolling with Cortland Sutton this week because of the massive target.
There's nothing wrong with them.
And that Hampton and Vidal.
Running backs.
I think that Sutton is a very good play there. Jason, are Pollard, JCM, Carter, Amari better pickup and starts this week instead of my Rico, Hampton, Vidal, Kamara? Well, obviously they're better than Kamara. Kamara's probably not going to be a go this week again. Is Pollard great in general this week? The only reason Pollard has been getting better looks is because these games have been they've been generating a little bit more offense over the last several weeks, the Tennessee Titans have. And we know that when given the opportunities, Pollard can be successful. The only thing holding Pollard back over the last several weeks is that he hadn't been getting a touchdown. So he's been getting some touchdowns recently. JCM had a good week with Chris Rodriguez out. That is something to monitor. The reason that is something to monitor is because the Eagles have been slightly below average to their norm in allowing points to fantasy running backs. Now, the problem with JCM is that he's very game script dependent. So if they are out of that game early, there is no way that they're going to continue to run the ball with JCM.
And there's no way they're not out of that game early.
They're going to have McNichols out. They're going to have McNichols or Rodriguez, whoever's there, out on the field. Carter and Amari DiMercato, you guys know I'm a little bit of a Michael Carter stan. Have been for
I was so disappointed by him. He had basically the entire game because the other running back got hurt in the first quarter and he didn't produce.
But the thing I want to caution you against here is that here's the last 4 weeks running backs that Atlanta has faced. So they've went up against Bucky, they went up against the Seattle, they went up against Brees, and they went up against New Orleans. So if we come down here to how Brees did in that game, 68 yards and a touchdown. And just numbers on the ground, right? New Orleans, week 12, we had a combined 28 rush attempts by Shook, Neal, Taysom Hill, Tipton, and Kamara for 79 yards. The reason I bring this up, and even going to Seattle here, Seattle ended up winning that game. They had 26 total attempts for 129 yards. Kenneth Walker ran 10 times for 29 yards. The reason I bring that up is that the Arizona Cardinals are facing Atlanta this week. And the fact of the matter remains is that Atlanta has been allowing one of the fewest attempts per game on the ground with one of the fewest yardage totals allowed. And with Jacoby Brissett, and this also matches up to how the Arizona Cardinals have been playing recently, right? Is that they have been throwing the ball more than they have been running the ball. So there's no reason in my mind to say that Carter or Amari DiMercado are better plays than Hampton, Vidal, or Rico. For everything that I just said about Hampton and Vidal, there's still not a better play. The one guy that I'd keep my eye on is JCM. So I like Pollard. I do like that they're using him and generating a upside for him, right? But I do have concern with the game script in that game, that there's a real possibility that Kansas City's defense will snuff him out. But if he's given 20 carries in that game because Kansas City doesn't trust Gardner Minshew, then it's perfectly possible that Pollard will be a better play than Hampton and Vidal, right?
I think Pollard would be the one I would take of that group to pick up.
There's 22 possible attempts. There will be 22 potential possible attempts. And if you split that 60-40 between Pollard and Spears, that's probably going to be a decent enough game. The only reason I mentioned Krosky Merritt again is Philadelphia has been allowing 25 attempts in over 126 yards over the last 4 games. And if you look at who they've played over the last 4 games, you look at it and they've got Vegas, which they stopped Ashton Genty, Chargers, Chicago, and Dallas. That Chicago game really inflates those stats. Okay. So keep that in mind, that I do think JCM is interesting, but I like Pollard because Pollard, they're going to continue to use him. They seem to want to use him at least this year. Start one of these tight ends this week: Warren, Waller, Jake Ferguson, Loveland, or Schultz. You're not going to get me to not like Dalton Schultz this year, guys. Dalton Schultz continues to generate points. And while the matchup might not be the best matchup on the slate for tight ends because Vegas has stopped the tight end, yes, that's true. There are games where he's going to have less receptions. That's going to happen. Kansas City was one of them. Buffalo was another one. But on average, he's getting about 5 to 6 receptions a game. The question is, can he overcome that the Raiders are only giving around 5 targets a game? Because that's a very low output yardage-wise for Schultz.
Yes,
I think I got to take Waller out of that grouping of guys for the touchdown upside. Okay. Now, if Riley Leonard plays this week versus Phillip Rivers,
they already said it's Rivers. They said Rivers is doing this week.
Warren, Warren is interesting enough, but I think you got to go Waller there because of the matchup and because his touchdown upside.
And I agree that I actually kind of think you got to take the Colts off the menu.
Jason, set my lineup this week between quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, tight end, 2 flexes: Burrow, Nix, or Trevor. Well, Trevor did incredible last week, guys. He wasn't my start last week for everybody that asked about it, but I did think that he was an interesting play. Turned out with 6 touchdowns.
That's a quit, man. This might be anyone that plays the Jets. They're right there with the Bengals defense, man.
Best game of the slate for a quarterback, which was quite amazing. Denver goes up against Jacksonville. You can't get me to not like Bo Nix this week for the reason that, yes, Jacksonville's defense has been playing. They played some shitty quarterbacks. Yeah, it's true. So their stats might be a little bit inflated in that same regard. Over the last 4 games, Jacksonville's played the Jets, Daniel Jones being hurt, Cam Ward, and then Jacoby Brissett. So when you look at Jacoby Brissett, what did Jacoby Brissett do? 317 yards and 1 touchdown, 49 pass attempts. We know that Bo Nix is going to be let off the chain and continue to be let off the chain. He finally generated touchdowns this week. That was one of my concerns from last week's show. I think you got to lean into Bo Nix this week, despite Trevor Lawrence having that 6 touchdown game, because unless Patrick Surtain is out, I don't really see Trevor Lawrence generating more than 3 total touchdows in that game.
They're not going to allow a 20-yard across the middle anytime they want. I
can't see Bo Nix generating more points. Now, out of these,
Bob, I disagree. Of that group, I want to take Burrow playing Miami. Miami has just flat out quit. Their secondary is horrible, and Burrow doesn't get embarrassed 2 weeks in a row.
Sure, you can take Joe Burrow. You absolutely can. But I do question just in general how that game is going to look with both teams
Minka's
being out.
Not playing. That secondary without Minka might be the worst in the league.
It's fair. I mean, that is absolutely fair. The other point to make about Trevor, right, is that Denver's been allowing 37 pass attempts as well, because again, the offense is trying to get a couple more points on the board there too. So while while I do think that Burrow can be an option out of this grouping of players, I do also think that Bo Nix is interesting, right? Just because of when you have a quarterback that can throw the ball and generate some yardage on the ground, that they're letting that up, that Jacksonville is making it happen.
I don't trust Nix. I know
I've
I've
been
saying this all year. I'm just not there.
So if you want to lean Burrow, you can lean Burrow. If you want to lean Nix, you can lean Nix. If you want to lean Trevor Lawrence, the one stat for Trevor Lawrence that you would want to look at in regards to this is that he's going to have the pass attempts. Denver's been allowing 37 pass attempts over the last 4 games on average. When you take a look at the total pass attempts, it's 148. It's the number one amount of pass attempts over the 4-game slate. Guess who's number 2? That's Jacksonville. Okay. So you look at that matchup is ripe for the picking for these 2 quarterbacks to take advantage of. I think that all 3 of these guys are good options this week. I lean in the Knicks. Joe leans in the Burrow, but I can see many reasons why you could lean into Trevor Lawrence as well. Now, where we come down to is these wide receivers and running backs, because when I look at these running backs here, I'm probably leaning Rico and Hampton. Okay. I know what I said about Vidal, but it's really like an either or situation here. Vidal got the one target for the big, long touchdown catch a couple weeks ago. Didn't really generate anything on the ground. Omarion didn't really do that either. The amount of rush attempts that they've been generating over the last several games has not been nice, right? And that's the reason why you asked about Pollard. Would I feel comfortable with Rico and Pollard? Yeah, I think I could roll with Rico and Pollard over Hampton, Vidal, and Kamara. Then we go to these wide receivers. Well, obviously, I am starting Puka. I am starting Nico. Those guys are not hitting my bench. So then it comes down to Tet and Wandale. And I have every reason to believe that Wandale is going to get peppered with at least 8 to 9 targets in this game.
He got a touchdown, 20 yards downfield, Bob. It was crazy.
Washington is not good. So I'm putting Puka, Nico, and Wandale into my wide receiver positions. And then I'm coming down to the 2 flexes here because I don't see your tight end listed. I'm sure you have a good tight end there. So then what I'm looking at for my 2 flexes is I'm probably leaving Hampton, Vidal, and Kamara on my bench. And then I'm rolling with a couple of these wide receivers here in my flex spots.
Burden's not playing, though. They said he was week to week.
Burden is week to week, and that's what my trepidation is about that. So, yeah, I mean,
hey, Jason, shake those hips. Put Shakira in. That's definitely one of your flexes, and I wouldn't play Burden unless Rome is out as a hard.
And then
roll.
You're playing Ted.
Yeah,
you're playing Ted.
That's the answer.
So yeah, I mean, like, that's fair. Jonathan, I hope for garbage time with Waller or try to grab Colby Parkinson, also Tracy or Sutton full PPR. Waller's the guy that you want out of those 2 guys. The reason why is Higbee. Colby Parkinson is great, but the Rams do generate a lot of tight end points because their tight ends are on the field a lot. And so when you look at that, there's a chance Higbee might be activated soon. Will he play this week? Probably not. But also Seattle has not given up a touchdown over the last 4 weeks to the tight end position. And they faced, you're looking at Tyler Warren, Kyle Pitts, Chig, Gunnar Helm, and Hawkinson. So that's a decent amount of tight ends that didn't get any touchdowns against Seattle. And we know that his big game came with 2 touchdowns, but he's only around 5 to 6 targets anyway. So that could absolutely happen with Waller on a team that doesn't really have another tight end other than Julian Hill there. So Waller's your guy you want. And then here, I think this is really interesting because I do think that Tracy has the potential against this week to generate a good amount of first downs for the Giants.
I agree with that, but the volume that Sutton's getting
against Minnesota.
You can't overlook that.
And the one thing about the Giants here against Minnesota is that Minnesota has been really bad against the run.
That's true.
And I think that there's going to be first downs to be had in this game. And while I don't want to pass up 10 targets for Sutton, I do think that the total amount of times that Tyrone Tracy touches the ball is going to be more than the total number of times that Sutton touches the ball. So I would lean a little bit more into Tracy in that in that regard. Adding in there that you also get 0.3 points for rushing attempt, plus you get the first down points. I do think that Tyrone Tracy is a better play.
My pleasure over the top, yeah.
Nick, it sucks. We've been there. We've all been there. Disappointment City. I just want to touch on this real quick for you guys, is that Pickens has been the most disappointing player for me over the last 2 weeks. Really not. I had him in a lot of best balls, that the ones that advanced. He did not carry me any further. Huge disappointment Pickens is over the last 2 games. Not sure why.
I get it.
I'm holding the Saints defense for week 16. Drop for the Chiefs instead. For week 16 this week, do I think the Chiefs are a good defense to have? Sure. But what I do know is that the Tennessee Titans, even when
before you say that, you need to find out if Jones is playing or not.
But he
got taken out of that game late.
Joe, here's what I'm about to say is that the Titans over the last several weeks, outside of playing the Jaguars, so you look at the last 4 games, they've scored over 20 points in 3 out of the last 4 games. While none of those defenses are, and that's against, and again, that's against the Niners, who aren't that good, the Browns, the Jaguars stopped them, and then the Seahawks allowed 24 points. So there is going to be garbage time on the table potentially, and I worry that the Chiefs might not be able to hold that back to the extent that they've held some other teams back recently. I might still stick with the Saints, but I don't think I'm ready to make that decision today. So I'd still say play the Saints, but the Chiefs are very interesting this week. Very interesting. Rumpel, we'll get to that deep dive in a we'll get to that deep dive. Let's go down here. We're going to queue all the deep dives up for a little bit later, guys. If you're just joining us, we are Local Football Flavor. We do answer all the questions that come in. We are going to be on today and tomorrow as well. Nick, my faith in Genty and Jaylen Warren is at an all-time low. Do I pick up Hubbard off the waivers or perhaps another running back? If Hubbard is on the waivers, I'm absolutely interested in picking up Chuba Hubbard. As I said last week, Genty is very problematic, especially in defenses that are going to generate pressure. I'm not starting Genty in those matchups. I suggested to you that Genty wasn't a good play this past week, but I also thought that Jaylen Warren might be able to generate more. Gainwell was the guy instead. So the optics there were still sound. It's just the wrong guy. So do I trust Jaylen Warren moving forward? He did say that he was sick. I'm not as worried about Jaylen Warren as I am about Genty. And that's saying a lot because Genty has the majority of that of those carries. But I do like Hubbard, and I think it'd be interesting to pick him up. Better wide receiver play this week. Coker, Leggett, Bourne, Booty, Golden, full PPR, starting CD, and Michael Wilson. So the guys that I'm kind of interested this week, starting with Matthew Golden, it's looking like Christian Watson might not play this upcoming week. Jaden Reed is back. But I question the amount of I question myself in thinking about this, though, guys, because Matthew Golden only saw 23 snaps. He got 3 targets, which you look at and you say, that feels like Jaden Reedy last year. But I do think that it's an interesting enough matchup on paper for Green Bay, but I do question if they're just going to run the ball because they have the potential. They have 2 running backs that are very capable of running the ball. In this game, we also have the Bears that want to run the ball, right? So we look at it and we say, all right, how can this go? How can this week go? And it's just one of those things where I'm just not definitely over the moon on any one of the players that you mentioned. But I see opportunities. Like I see opportunities for Booty. If Pearsall is out, I see opportunities for Kendrick Bourne, right? And with Coker there, do I see the same number or similar number of opportunities for Coker this week? That's another big question, is that he ended up looking really good, right? 4 receptions.
I think fundamentally that there's not enough ball to go around in Carolina.
Right? Yeah, but again, if he's being looked at for touchdowns, I think that's very valuable.
Oh no, I get it. To me, it's hard to pick any of those 3 Carolina guys at this point. And you
Well, there's
guys
only
know all
one.
year how I've been feeling about Ted.
Yeah, and that's fair, Joe. I mean, it's absolutely fair. I think the one guy to keep your head on a swivel about is Kendrick Bourne, though. One of the reasons why I'm keeping my head on a swivel about that is overall just the Colts in general have been allowing a lot of total targets to wide receivers. And if Pearsall is not playing and Juwan Jennings is also in, the question is, will Kendrick Bourne reassume a Jennings style play? Will he assume the Ricky Pearsall style play? Who will get the targets that Ricky Pearsall might get? So I think he's interesting enough. I think he's a low floor with a extremely high ceiling, depending upon the number of opportunities. With that as well, Booty comes into play too. This is a team that he has not gotten over 5 targets. He's gotten 5 targets one time in the last 6 weeks. So that is very unreliable at the same point in time. So if you're looking for targets and if you're looking for safe targets, it's Coker. If you're looking for a potential high upside play, I do think Bourne potentially gets you there. And I think that Golden's interesting. But is he comfortable for me to start? Not at the moment. We could talk a little bit more about that on tomorrow as well, once we get some more news about Pearsall and once we get some more news about Christian Watson. Do I drop Pickens and play Reed, Coker, Adonai, Mitchell, and Step? Do I drop Pickens? No. I don't drop Pickens. If I had one of these, if I wanted to start one of these 3 other players, though, and I had some other assets to drop, I absolutely would want to start Adonai Mitchell. Again, no matter what quarterback he seems to be with.
Yeah, but I'm not playing Adonai Mitchell over Pickens.
I could give you a reasonable argument, Joe, that is something that you can do.
I see the quit in the Jets, and that's just
no.
I can't invest in a team that's imploding.
I get where you're coming.
Of course, you can always make the argument George Pickens is imploding personally. So
I get where you're coming from, but over the last 3 weeks that we've seen him, 12 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets.
Yeah, he's going to be this year's Westbrook Akine, the guy who comes on late but does absolutely nothing the following season.
I'm okay with something like that. Better quarterback start this week: Bo, A-Rod, McCarthy, Bryce Young, or Kirk Cousins. So I'm gonna
I know Aaron Rodgers has been winning games and he's been on TV looking good. Statistically, you can't invest in him.
I'm gonna throw you a loop on this one, Joe.
Group, I'm probably going in Bo.
Joe, I'm gonna throw you a loop on this one, man. You're going to kind of be like, what? Why are you saying this? While I like Bo and I am endorsing Bo this week for some lineups, I like Bo, okay? A-Rod, statistically speaking, has the best matchup on the slate. Here's the reason why.
Oh, I get that. I just don't trust him.
Over the last 4 games, the Detroit Lions are averaging allowing over 300 yards a game to passers.
I get that. He's also played some of the best passing in a row.
35 pass attempts. Now, you say, they've been against some good passing teams. Rams, yes. Dallas, yes. Green Bay, not so much. Green Bay's
Green Bay's definitely had its Steelers, though.
But again, not a great passing team, but Jordan Love went for 4 touchdowns. Jameis Winston, 300-some yards.
That's what Jameis Winston does.
2 touchdowns. Even Jalen Hurts went for 135 yards on 28 attempts because they ran the ball 40 times in that game. So while statistically on paper, Aaron Rodgers has a chance to really blow up the Lions defense. There's no weather to worry about. He's faced Dan Campbell and the Lions. He's faced the Lions before at Green Bay, not the Dan Campbell iteration so much. But you look at it and you say,
they knocked them out of the playoffs. Either they're losing or we're winning.
Well, you look at this and say, if Aaron Rodgers is able to get to 35 pass attempts, which has been the average that they've been allowing, okay, even if he gets to 30, the question is, though, not with the pass attempts. The question for me is the generation of touchdowns through the air, because the Steelers have a lot of other weapons and they kind of refuse to throw the ball into the end zone. They ran the ball with Jonnu. Like, who does that? Why is Jonnu on a rush attempt, right? So my question with Aaron Rodgers isn't that the opportunities won't be there. It's that will he be able to find the Jordan Love inside of him and get to that 4 touchdowns like Jordan Love did against Lions on Thanksgiving? I still lean Bo, but I just wanted to share that stat. Is that
we don't have very much time on this show's history that we talk positive, let alone you talking positive about Aaron Rodgers. You guys should bookmark that one.
Just saying. And Nick, frozen piss everywhere. You should see the streets. The streets are a mess. They're
not even bothering trying to clean them up. But that means we're 40 minutes behind. We got to start catching up here a little bit.
Let's fucking go, man. I need 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 flexes this week. Well, you're not getting me off Trevion Henderson.
Nope.
It's just not going to happen.
CMC
either. You're definitely not getting me off CMC. The reason you're not getting me off Trevion Henderson is both that the Ravens allow a lot of pass catching attempts to running backs, while the yardage total isn't great in terms of the rushing yardage total. If Trevion gets those extra attempts through the air, I'm okay with that yardage total. CMC also, you can't get off of CMC for the same reason that you're always going to be playing Christian McCaffrey. There's going to be 25 total attempts on the ground at minimum. Christian McCaffrey's averaging like 18 to 19 attempts per game anyway. So it's definitely going to be Henderson, definitely going to be CMC at the 2 running back positions to start with.
Your running back or your receiver room has to be Evans.
Joe, let's get there. 2 wide receivers. I'm definitely starting Mike Evans this week. In a limited fashion, he was able to generate a large number of yards. Now, where I question this at is just that in general, what iteration of the Carolina defense do we see? I do think that Baker will be able to generate some touchdowns. I absolutely do. Mm-hmm. So I think that Evans is a better play than Igbuka out of those players. Then I want to just touch on the tight end real quick. I'm going Waller at tight end. So if I'm starting tight end for Waller, but I noticed you didn't ask for tight end. So that's where this gets.
Assume he's asking for a tight end because he wrote it out.
Then we look here and we see Jacoby Myers, right, Joe? How do you feel about Jacoby Myers this week in a matchup that should be
So my 2 receivers are Rice and Evans. And the whole reason it's Rice is because he's the only team and Gardner Minshew will feed someone.
I agree with that. I'm going with
Rice and Evans at receiver. And then so now it's coming down to Myers, who every single time Jacksonville needed 10 yards, Myers was open 25 yards in the middle of the field. He was open consistently, and had that game been more competitive, I believe he would have gotten a lot more, because you saw a definite shift in that game that as it became out of hand, Lawrence started looking for BTJ. That felt like locker room cleanup to me more than anything. So I think that there was more of that than Myers not being favored. So I have no problem with Myers and Swift being my 2 flexes. That would be how I would look at this when it's all said.
Yeah, and honestly here, when I look at it, and the thing about Swift that concerns me is what I do think that Swift is going to get about 15 total touches in this game, maybe 17 total touches, combining receptions and rush attempts.
What will he do with them? Basically, they lose to Green Bay. The whole thing's on free fall.
That is a huge question. Myers, the targets are going to be there for Jacoby Myers, and I do agree with Joe that Jacoby Myers is a fantastic play on the slate this week. Again, I would pay attention to who's starting back there, but over the last 4 games, they've been allowing around 20 targets to wide receivers, Denver has, and generating a good amount of yards. So I think you have to play Jacoby Myers in that respect. I do think you have to play Rice. You might be a little bit concerned about Rice with Gardner Minshew, but the last time we saw Gardner Minshew is that Gardner Minshew is not afraid to throw the ball. The one problem with Gardner Minshew is that Gardner Minshew also likes to run the ball in the red zone too. So he can limit those red zone attempts for wide receivers. And one thing I like about that Tennessee matchup is the possibility for touchdown upside. For me, this comes down to, do you want to start Swift or Chase Brown? Because Swift's matchup is a bit challenging this week, depending upon, and I get what you're saying, Joe, is that the season's on the line. So you put out your best players and you keep rocking with your best players, and Cincinnati's out. The other thing to say about Chase Brown, though, too, Joe, is that, again, Miami is continually down there as not giving up a lot of points to running backs in terms of total numbers, right? But they're giving up a lot of opportunities. So there's going to be about 22 opportunities in that game for Chase Brown. And if I like Burrow this week, I also like Chase Brown this week. So I think I'd land on the other side of that and be on Chase Brown. I'd be on CMC, Henderson, Chase Brown, Rice, Evans, Myers, Waller. But I could see a lot of reasons why to be on Swift over Chase Brown. Now, when we look
I haven't been on Chase Brown since the beginning, and I'm not jumping on now.
When we look at the quarterback here, I'm on Jacoby. And I know that I'll get lambasted by you for it, Joe, but I'm on Jacoby.
Dude, until Lamar shows he's healthy, he's running again, I get it. I mean, it's Baltimore season's on the line. If they lose again, they're out. And Baltimore's playing a very good defense who still has a chance at the 1 seed. I get Brissett. You're going to get the fourth quarter garbage. Brissett's going to do two things. He's going to score in his first drive of the game, then he's going to score in garbage time, and nothing in between. I'm okay with that because I'm not sure Lamar ever has an upside time.
All right. Fair. Bills coming out with a victory. You got to love it.
We don't need to put it up every time.
It was funny, though, that I believe it was like David Portnoy, I believe it was. He was like saying, the Bills are winning, Bills are going to win, Patriots are going to win, Patriots are going to win, Patriots are going to win. And then the Bills ended up coming back and winning. That game was beautiful. Would you guys,
no doubt.
Would you guys start Adonai Mitchell or Burden this week? By default, I'd be on Adonai if Burden is out. If Burden is not out, I'd be on Burden because I'm not sure that Roma Dunze plays this week.
See, I'm only on Burden if Rome is out and Burden is in. I mean, that's the situation.
Fair. That's how I view it too. Rumpel, speaking of defense, we already answered that one. I'd be on the Eagles over there. Would you guys start Jennings over Rice? I could see a world, Jesse, where Jennings could be a really good start this week over Rashee Rice.
I could see a world where Rice gets 12 targets.
The one thing that I just kind of want to go with here before we move forward is that knowing that Gardner Minshew is playing is I want to look at Gardner Minshew's career statistical completion percentage, okay, over the last 4 years. All right. So notwithstanding 2025, we're looking at a passer who's 66%, 62%, 57%, 68%. Okay, great. So now going in and seeing that Kansas City is facing off against Tennessee and seeing that Tennessee is offering 28 pass attempts on average over the last 4 games. If you're completing 60% of 30 passes, that's going to be a great game for your pass catchers. So I do think that Rashee Rice is a great play this week. I'm also very interested in Juwan Jennings, knowing that Indy is also allowing 34 pass attempts per game.
Yeah, that's the Monday. Jennings is also the Monday night game. So there is something to just storing one in the tank. But I think Rice is going to get over-targeted like crazy. And
do I think the Chiefs are a good start against the Titans? I gave you all the reasons why they could be, but also I would be cautious of garbage time points going the other direction. So if the Chiefs are not able to generate turnovers, you're probably going to end up only with like 3 or 4 points if the Titans are able to generate points. That would be my one concern. So take that for how you need to take that. Start 2 wide receivers out of Sutton, Myers, Olave, Higgins. This is easy for me. It's Sutton and Myers. There are many things that I can say that I like about Chris Olave. I absolutely really love that he has been getting touchdowns.
This is a question. I don't think this is a slam dunk as you think it is.
I think it is.
See, give me a reason. My entire argument why. Anyone playing the Jets, home run. Now, the argument against Olave is he's no longer clear number 1 by himself status like he used to be. They're not looking at him like they did under the old regime. That is a ding on Olave, which probably puts him last in the group. But again, you play the Jets, it could be huge. And T. Higgins against Miami, who's quit.
Is that T or Jaden? I don't know if that's T or Jaden.
Gross.
I don't know if that's T or Jaden. That's why I said Sutton and
Well,
Myers.
if it's T, it's T. If it's Jaden, not so much so. But I would rank it T Higgins, Sutton, Myers, Olave, Jaden.
Yeah, I mean,
It just comes down to, do you believe it's T Higgins or not?
And we can
talk. If it's
more.
T Higgins, I'm picking him over Myers.
We can definitely talk about that more tomorrow. And Joe, you're absolutely right. Anybody playing the Jets is a good play. It really depends for me on the quarterback situation for the Jets, because I do believe in Tyrod Taylor a little bit more than Brady Cook, et cetera. But I haven't gotten word or looked up any news to say.
Also, is Shook playing, because he got knocked out of the end of the game too. He missed like the last play. He got hurt.
I believe he is. I do like Sutton. Again, those targets can go anywhere in that game, though. So it doesn't mean that Sutton's going to get the majority of them, but he has a high chance to get the majority of them. And Myers has been balling out. Since coming to Jacksonville, he's got a good share of touchdowns, good share of receptions.
Yes.
So
it's a good system for him.
The reason why I like Sutton and Myers is because that game projects to be one of my favorite phrases, back and forthy. And so in a back and forthy game, I do favor the wide receivers, because those offenses are going to have equal amounts of opportunities on the field. Top 5, set the lineup: quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 running back, tight end, flex. 0.5 PPR: Purdy, Sutton, Michael Wilson, Bijan, HN, Tyler Warren, ETN. The bench is Nix, Brees, Igbuka, BTJ, Debo, MHJ. I like how you've said it already.
Yeah, so that's your starting lineup last week. Well, the only debate you'd have here is, if Harrison is back, do you bench Michael Wilson for Igbuka? No. That's the only debate you have. I'm not even sure I would do it, but that's the only debate that I have. And I also, if I was Arizona, I would not bring Harrison back.
Now, the only thing that you would maybe change is Nix and Purdy. You could favor Nix a little bit more in this matchup, because you could potentially see more rushing attempts from Christian McCaffrey against Indianapolis. Again, they're letting about 25 attempts. So you could favor Nix a little bit more than Purdy in that situation. I think it's fair to start Purdy as well. The other guy to think about is Breece Hall. And the only reason I'm suggesting Breece Hall here, I wouldn't want to start him over Bijan. I wouldn't want to start him over A-Chain. And I most likely wouldn't start him over ETN, even though ETN's matchup is a little bit tougher. The one reason why I would think about Breece is that over the last 4 games, New Orleans has allowed around 16 rushing attempts to RB1s. In total, they've been offering around 27 total attempts and 127 yards on the ground. The only question that I have with Breece is what quarterback will be there and how will that offense be generated. So I do want to think about starting Breece, because it is a better matchup than ETN. But like I said last week, ETN is the hot hand, and you got to keep rolling with a hot hand, especially in a back and forthy matchup. So I do want to think about Breece, but ultimately I would end up probably leaving him on my bench, and I might end up switching Sunday morning Nix into Purdy. I don't see
Breece
it.
has become a fat chick with a good personality. All right, this one's pretty easy. You give me the Bills against Shedeur Sanders in a snowstorm. The Shedeur Sanders is horrible. They're averaging 1 yard a carry with Judkins as he's hit the rookie wall. The Bills are the worst defense of that 3, but the situation's the best.
And that's absolutely fair. So here's the thing, Joe. Gotta love to see a Monty question.
I love Monty ball.
So here's the thing to think about with Montgomery, guys, is that the Steelers have been offering one of the highest attempts, but they've been offering less touchdowns. The problem with Montgomery is that he is very touchdown dependent.
So touchdown dependent.
If he does not get the touchdown, he is going to get you around 6 points, if that. With Aaron Jones, on the other hand, Aaron Jones is very much offensive dependent. He is in a matchup that is projected to have less opportunities, but those opportunities potentially could generate more.
The long story short, Aaron Jones is the play for the touchdown quality.
Yeah, and I would be on Aaron Jones over Monty, just because I don't see Monty, even though the Steelers' rush defense is putrid. I just don't see Monty getting that touchdown this week.
Yeah, and the only way is if Derek Harmon doesn't play. That would be your look for there. Smitty, we just answered this question because it was in the same group. It's still the Bills over the Chiefs.
It does feel like a trap game. It does feel like a trap game. But yeah, it would, again, I'd need more time to consider this, but I do think the Bills are a good play this week, knowing the situation. Now, Kenneth Gainwell or Javonte Williams? Now,
that's an interesting question.
Is a question. It really is a good question because
it is. It never should be, and this is how gross the Steelers' offense has become. But here's the thing. Kenneth Gainwell is effectively the straw that is stirring the Steelers' offense's drink. And why that is the case is so stupidly beyond me. But that's what they're choosing to do. So Gainwell's going to give you a better chance at catches, definitely a better chance at a receiving touchdown. And we saw Javonte Williams have a great start to the game, get hurt, miss the drive. They scored their rushing touchdown, and then return later in the game. When you look at this overall, the Steelers are going to have to score points in Detroit. So I'm going to lean Gainwell because he's more integral to the offense. In Dallas, I've been saying this all year. When Dallas quits, they quit harder than anyone.
Well, I want to say this, though, too, Joe.
I just don't know if they will quit or not.
I do want to find a way to get both these guys in my lineup. But knowing that you have this question, you probably have some better options in there. However, what I want to say about Gainwell is that you're going to look at the stats and you're going to see that Detroit doesn't give up a lot of pass receptions to running backs. But when they faced Tyrone Tracy a couple weeks ago, you saw that he got 3 receptions for 68 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you go in and you say, okay, well, they play Green Bay as well. Well, Jacobs isn't a huge pass-catching back, okay? And basically the running backs aren't catching a lot there. Jacobs had 1 reception in that game. Chris Brooks had 2. Then you go to Dallas, and Javonte Williams is not catching a lot of balls either, right? So you look at it, he's around 2. So Gainwell, over the last 2 weeks, has had 14 total pass-catching opportunities, plus around 13 to 14 rushing opportunities. If you're giving me a running back that has 21 potential opportunities, plus those opportunities mainly come through the air, I'm rolling with that over a guy like Javonte, who is just going to get those opportunities on the goal
Javonte's
line.
also doing the classic Dallas running back thing where he's great early and fades away late.
He's doing the dirty. He's doing the dirty work, but it's also proven that Jaylen Warren can absolutely take touchdown upside away, but also Javonte Williams touchdown upside.
Warren hasn't scored any touchdowns this year. He's been wildly disappointing.
He can be. I like Gainwell. I try to find a way to get both of them in. Nice, Michael. Love to hear it. Week 1 of the playoffs in the books. We're moving on to semis. Stoked. Unfortunately, I have to play the number 1 seed, and he's got CMC, Cook, Puka, just to name a few. Well, I hope you win, but I also hope these players do well for my best ball team. So we're kind of at diametrically opposed positions here, but I see a world where we can both win if your players do exceptionally well as well. Juan, for my QB1, I have Brissett and Trevor Lawrence. Waivers are Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, McCarthy, or Caleb Williams. I don't make any moves there, Juan. I'm keeping Brissett, I'm keeping Trevor, and I'm letting the other players go. If I wanted to consider picking up another quarterback, it'd be CJ Stroud. But I'm not considering any of those other quarterbacks.
And the question just comes down to which one do you start, and that's a tough one, but I'm still going with Brissett because I know I'm getting 3 touchdowns out of him.
On to the second round. Who for the wide receivers? 1, 2, 3 in a flex spot. Well, we said earlier that we're on Mike Evans. The opportunities should continue to be there. Davante Adams would be on there for me, but he is hurt and he may not play. And
that's the Thursday night game. He ain't playing.
With it being a Thursday night game, I don't consider that as being possible. I'm starting Jacoby Myers, so it's going to be Mike Evans, Jacoby Myers for me at least. Then we look at it, and you have your running backs here. Henderson, Jacobs, Taylor. I'm starting all 3 of those guys.
Yeah,
Henderson, Jacobs, and
that's your flex.
So Henderson is in my flex, and I'm probably going to end up on Addison when all's said and done. Out of those,
I would probably go Booty over Addison, but you're splitting hairs at that point. There's no real point in diving deeper.
Addison's at least getting the opportunities. Booty's not.
That's true, but
it's
a fundamental answer. Even if you're not doing anything, you go with the opportunities over not. Yeah, and that's the answer.
And then
with the
waiver wire here, I am picking up Jawar Jordan. Woody Marks, the stat on Woody Marks is that he has been hurt or left a game early in 13 consecutive games. And
That's a lot.
They used Jawar Jordan. They used Agbonwele, however you say his name. I am prioritizing and making a claim for Jawar Jordan. While I might not be starting him, I am absolutely making a claim.
So, you don't want someone else to have him.
So Juan, for me, it's going to be Evans, Addison, Myers as my 3 wide receivers, and then I'm starting Henderson, Jacobs, and Taylor at my running back.
And if you need to cut someone, it would be Debo.
I'd drop QJ if I needed to cut somebody.
Either way, they're both cuttable.
If I'm being honest, his team on paper is better than mine. However, we don't play on paper, and this is the thing. Here's the thing, guys. Nobody thought last week that Kyle Pitts would have 45 points.
Or that Lawrence
Trevor Lawrence would get 6 touchdowns. We projected him to do well, as I said on the show.
I had a guy make it out of my pod who didn't have a tight end, but he had Lawrence.
I told you guys that Lawrence would be a good enough play that last week. I projected around 2 to 3 touchdowns for him, but again, I was not expecting 6, and that is why we set the lineups. That is why we do the research. That is why we do what we do, because any given Sunday we could have Jonathan Taylor drop 12 yards, right? And you get knocked out of your pod, even though you have Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, James Cook. You could have those in a super flex league, and it sucks. Do I drop MHJ for Waller this week if MHJ is out and play him over Warren? I would.
I think so. I think it's a hard yes.
I would. What's crazy is I scored the most points this week, Michael said, that I've scored all year. But while my opponent this week was on a bye last week, he would have beaten me by 3 points. That's the magic, mother.
Life, dude.
Magic. Sutton or Tracy? I believe I was on Tracy. I was on Tracy on that one, Jonathan. And you can go back and listen to the reasons why if you were not able to hear it. Be careful with Waller because I read that McDaniels didn't roll out benching Tua for the rest of the season. And Jonathan, you mentioned here Zach Wilson really is that much worse than Tua. I don't think he's that much worse than Tua, but it might project better for Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington and not as highly for Waller.
Again, the bigger thing with why I'm on the Tua bus isn't even, or correction, the Waller bus isn't even necessarily who the quarterback is. It's that Daniels wants the Raiders job, and he has to show he can use a tight end to get the Raiders job. End of discussion.
Donta, championship week for me. Stafford or Brissett, Eagles, Chiefs, Bills defense. I'm on the Eagles defense out of those defenses. Joe gave you lots of reasons why the Bills are a good play as well. I don't think you can bench Jason Myers at kicker.
Well, Philly wasn't in that group. Philly, I do have ahead of the Bills.
I don't think you can bench Jason Myers unless the weather in Seattle is bad. Fairbairn is a phenomenal kicker too. I value these guys as kind of a 1A, 1B kind of situation. Myers is a little bit higher for me. When it comes to the quarterbacks, I do value Stafford and Brissett very similarly. I have Brissett a little.
Tiebreaker is on Thursday night.
I have Brissett a little bit higher this week, personally. MT, what would you offer to move up to the 101? I have the 106, the 107, and 2 4th-round picks coming up. What's realistic? I think you'd probably – now, knowing Dynasty and knowing how everybody values different picks differently is depending on who ends up declaring, et cetera, that 101, you might have to give up both of your first-round picks to get it. I don't think the 4th-round picks do you any good. As a bargaining chip here. And you might have to include some players if you don't want to give up both of those first round picks. Frosty, I set my lineup for the semis. It's 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, 1 tight end. Dart or Purdy? I would be on Purdy.
Me too.
You guys know I like Jackson Dart, but I would be on Purdy over Dart in that scenario. Henderson, Brown, Judkins, Woody. If Woody plays, he's in a smash spot.
Yeah, it'd be Henderson and Woody.
If Woody plays, he's in a smash spot. Henderson and Woody would be the guys. If it's not, then then you could find a world, Joe, where you might want to start Quinshon Judkins this week.
I'm not finding it. I think he's hit the rookie wall, and I've seen Cleveland implode my entire life.
And Chase Brown, similarly. If London is playing, London's absolutely going to start for me. CD's my other guaranteed start. Garrett Wilson, I haven't heard anything about him starting or not. So then you're down to Godwin or if London doesn't play, you put in Godwin. Okay, so it'd be CD and Godwin if London doesn't play. If Burden plays and Rome is out, I could see a reason to play Burden over Godwin.
I agree with that.
Okay. So far I have Purdy, Henderson, Woody, if Woody's playing. If Woody's not playing, you transfer it into Chase Brown. Judkins is off the table. It's CD and London at the wide receiver position for us. If London's out, I like Burden if Rome is also out and Burden is healthy. Then here's the interesting thing. I think you can start both tight ends this week. I don't have a problem starting both.
I think given this lineup, I think you can.
I don't have a problem starting both.
I would start both tight ends too.
If you wanted to start all three running backs of Hendo, Brown, and Woody over Pitts, sure. I think that's fine as well. If London comes back, though, I think it's reasonable to decrease your expectations of Pitts and start Chase Brown.
That's exactly it.
So that's kind of how I feel about that. And guys, we will get to the deep dives. We have not forgotten about those deep dives. This week, I'm going to start Hampton, I think Michael said. I'm hoping he really turns it up and gets a little more lopsided of work compared to Vidal in the past 2 weeks. But Genty's scaring me, man. I told you last week Genty was very scary against the Texans.
We told you guys this when we were drafting him.
Genty had less than 100 yards in the past 3 games combined. I have Neal versus the Jets, but he's questionable. Also have Monty and Manungai, but I can't start either of them. I think that we talked about Monty as being an interesting play. Keep your eye on Jawar Jordan, Michael. Go out on the waivers, pick up Jawar Jordan. And if Woody can't go, I'm probably rolling into him this week over Ashton Genty.
Yeah, no, that's such a good matchup.
What if I picked up Michael Carter? Would you start him over Genty?
No, Carter's a hard no for me. He gave me nothing. I want nothing to do with Carter.
I wouldn't start Carter over Genty in potentially a very pass-happy game. It'd be I'd look for Jawar Jordan and see what's going on there.
And Mike, he just gave you the answer for who to pick up. It's the Houston backup.
Waller, Schultz, or Loveland. Leaning Schultz, Tua isn't good. Tyler, we agree with that sentiment. We agree with that statement.
100% agree with that sentiment.
Now, I gave you all the reasons why Schultz is an interesting play as well, from the fact that his volume is almost indomitable. He gets a crazy amount of volume in certain games, and then other games he doesn't. The one concern that you might have is that the Raiders don't offer a lot of points to tight ends. You look over the last several weeks, that's Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram, Arande Gadsden, Njoku, and Fannin. But then you go in and you look at it from a game-by-game perspective here. Fannin still went 4 for 40, right? Arande Gadsden went 1 for 27, which was a little weird based upon what we know about the usage rates for Arande Gadsden. Evan Ingram, I believe, had a shitty game again for Evan Ingram, so 2 for 8, right? And then last week you saw Dallas Goedert just explode on their faces. So, is it possible that Dalton Schultz ends up somewhere in between? Absolutely. If you have no confidence in Darren Waller this week because of the quarterback situation, that's fair. And Schultz would be the guy that you lean into in that regard. Hopefully Pickens is a disappointment again this week too, since my opponent has him also. Hey, he could be a disappointment for anybody who doesn't have him right now. I don't believe a lot of people are carrying him on the show right now. Evans or Rice without Mahomes. I start both of them. I find a way to start both of them.
That's
Tyler.
Probably the right answer too. But I have Evans ahead of him.
I do have Evans slightly ahead of him, but I like to start both. I would definitely have to say have said Evans, but he's got a tough matchup this week. It's a tough goal. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's absolutely true. But you saw with a limited volume, right? And here's the other thing, right?
He's also got the extra rest coming off of Thursday. You're overthinking it. I know it's a tough matchup, but at the end of the day, Tampa needs this. Tampa's going through Evans and Bucky.
That's true. My wide receivers got nuked, MT. Pickens, Emeka, Rice, or Scary Terry. Already lost Neighbors, Garrett Wilson, Rip. It's all right. Out of this grouping of players, I'm definitely on Rashee Rice. If you're looking for 3, I'm still most likely starting Pickens out of that grouping of guys. The matchup isn't incredible by any means. And then I can't
get on Scary Terry. He's done to me.
I think I can be on Scary Terry. In a game where they might have to play catch up. The only problem here is that the Philadelphia defense is actually one that I really don't want to bank against. And the last time Terry McLaurin faced the Philadelphia defense was last year, and he went 3 for 7 with a touchdown. He's very touchdown dependent.
That's what Daniels was on, though.
But if he gets the touchdown, he'd be interesting.
I don't think you are. I think they might.
So yeah, Pickens and Mecca and Rice are reasonable. If you want to bench Pickens for Scary Terry, I wouldn't fault you for it. Would you guys keep Fannin in at flex this week in a PPR league, even though he's facing the Bills, who are number 1 against the Titans this year, as well as the fact that Shedeur is so volatile? I'm nervous about Fannin.
Shedur's not volatile. Shedeur is consistently bad. He had one game that was decent. They saw film on him. He's out.
I'm very scared for the prospects of Fannin in general. But if Njoku is out, I understand everything that we know about Buffalo is that Buffalo has not allowed tight ends to be good this year. But Harold Fannin got 14 total targets last week. That's an insane number of targets. If we look at who Buffalo's faced over the last few weeks, Hunter Henry, Gesicki, the Steelers, and Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz had one of his worst games of the year against them. The Steelers were a mess in this game as well, but Darnell Washington had 2 receptions for 45 yards. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that I've given the amount of opportunities that he can get, that Fannin would be a great play this week. Would I start him in the flex if I didn't have a better option, Michael? I don't really like Reed this week. I get why you guys might like him. One of the things that might work in Reed's favor is that he does play primarily out of the slot. Are the Bears great from the slot? Not really. So if they decide to throw him the ball, if Christian Watson's out, he could accumulate 6 to 7 targets. What he does with those 6 to 7 targets and maybe potentially 9 total touches if he gets some gadget plays, who's to say?
And guys, for all the audience out there, remember, we are doing a simulcast both vertically and horizontally. So you might be seeing questions that aren't in your queue. That's why this is happening.
And we will get to those deep dives, guys. We're going to clear out all the quick hits before we get to the deep dives. We're going to finish on all the deep dives. Quick hit here. Would you start Waller over Bowers this week? And if so, would you drop Corum or Chuba? No, I would not drop Corum.
Not dropping Corum.
I think I would not drop Chuba. Again, though, it's do or die time. Bowers, it's reasonable to temper expectations for Brock Bowers this week. But what we do know is that Houston has been offering around 8 total targets over the last 4 games to tight ends. If we look at who Houston's played over the last 4 games to see what those tight ends are, you're looking at McBride, Kelsey, Warren, Kincaid. Some of the best tight ends right now from a fantasy perspective, right? Kincaid was out that game, so it was Jackson Hawes and Dawson Knox combining for 5 total receptions. And then you look at Travis Kelce and you're like, okay, Travis Kelce over here sitting at around 1 reception, Noah Gray at 1 reception. So they didn't utilize them as much in that game. It was kind of a weird game for Patrick Mahomes. He only completed 14 out of 33 pass attempts. But also when you consider that Travis Kelce had 5 and Noah Gray had 3 total targets. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Bowers, who's the only game in town, right, that he's going to get 8 to 9 targets in this game. So would I drop one of those guys to pick up Waller? I would consider dropping Chuba to pick up Waller so somebody doesn't play Waller against me, right? But I'd ultimately probably start Brock Bowers. And out of all of our teams, we got Lawrence, we got Pitts. None of my Pitts teams advanced, which was very disappointing because I was drafting a lot of Michael Penix, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London as well. But we still have skin in the game on my side. We've got a best ball mania in there with Josh Allen and Puka. So we're hoping for a good week this week. We do also have a super flex in the game that has Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, and Jonathan Taylor on it. So we are hoping for some big numbers this week out of that because we only have one quarterback, which is Jalen Hurts in that game. Thankfully, he has a good matchup this week. So we do still have skin in the game. we are very, very excited.
Jesse, getting back into the quick hit bust, this one's easy. Judkins is the one you bench. You start Cook and Hampton.
Yeah. Cook is the guy. I think DK is a great start this week, guys.
Yep.
I think DK was a great start this past week. For those of you that started him, you got paid out with a touchdown. I am all about DK right now. I don't trust Ted. I don't think anymore. With the exception of Explosion Week 11, he hasn't really been playing well. I know Buka isn't either, but I'm thinking about starting him this week instead.
I'm starting Buka over Ted. That's what I would do.
It's reasonable. It's a reasonable assumption to make that if you don't want to start Ted, that's fine. Again,
Evans over both of them, though.
Not a lot of touchdowns are going the way of wide receivers against Tampa Bay, and he's not getting a lot of targets. So outside of that outside of the San Francisco and Atlanta game, so yeah, if you want to start Buka, sure. I'm on Dowdle, I think, this week over Judkins. Joe, how do you feel
Judkins
about that?
is hitting the wall. He's hitting Problem Town.
And we can talk more about it tomorrow. It's all right, Michael. It's all right.
Have your unknowns and let them share.
And we'll be here tomorrow too. We'll be here tomorrow too. We buy non-PPR, start 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 1 flex. At wide receivers, Jettis, Diggs, Igbuka, McLaurin, Rice, T. Higgins. I'm on Rice and Higgins out of that grouping of players there. If I need an alternate, I could see myself leaning Diggs, but I see Igbuka, Diggs, Jettis, and McLaurin all having similar floors and ceilings, depending on if they get the touchdown or not. So I'm on Rice and T out of that grouping. Then running backs, I'm absolutely on Gibbs. I'm absolutely on Trevion Henderson. Okay. So
and I would go with Kyron as my flex.
It comes down to Kyron
or JJ.
So it'd be Rice and T if he's playing. If T's not playing, I think you can lean into Igbuka a little bit more because the opportunities are going to be there. The running backs, I'm playing Trevion, Gibbs, and Kyron. I think those are the best starts of the bunch there. If MHJ plays, would you play Ladd over? I would not. I am absolutely standing Michael Wilson right now. I am not benching a wide receiver. I get it that the opportunities might not be there if MHJ comes back, but I am not benching a wide receiver attached to a quarterback that could potentially have 36 plus total opportunities in a game.
That's fair too.
Okay, I can't do it. And Ladd's not getting those opportunities as much.
No, he's not.
Juan, I believe we answered this question. It was Evans.
We did answer this question.
Evans, Addison, Myers, Trevion, Jacobs, JT, because we don't think that Adams is going to be playing. And out of this discussion of waivers, it was Jawar Jordan for us. I still like Rice with no Mahomes. I get it. But the opportunities are going to be there for Minshew. Career around 60%.
Dude, they just wanted to get Taylor on TV.
So I'm there for it. Out of these quarterbacks, again, I'm keeping both Brissett and Lawrence, and I'm probably starting Brissett. Seahawks D or the Bills D or New Orleans D this week, Joe? Thursday Night Football is always wild, and the Hawks have been
Bills are my third highest D of the week. It's the Bills.
But I'm down 16 going into week 2, so I need the upside to get the chip. I believe the Bills is an interesting play. Seahawks
get 3 touchdowns from Shador.
Seahawks are interesting as well. I like the Bills over the Browns there. 6 points for passing touchdowns. Dak versus the Chargers, Stroud versus the Raiders, McCarthy versus the Giants, Shook versus the Jets, Bryce versus the Bucs.
I think I'm going Shook versus the Jets.
And I think it's reasonable to lean into Stroud a little bit here as well. I know everything that we've said about the Giants defense not being exceptional by any means. Will J.J. McCarthy capitalize on it? It's possible that he gets around 2 touchdowns in that game. It really is possible. Bryce Young similarly can have a great game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're offering a lot of passing yards, and they haven't been great in the secondary, right? We just saw Kirk Cousins just really light them up in the second half of that game. C.J. Stroud's probably not going to have as many opportunities as Bryce Young or as much as
they just scored 40 and only threw 3 touchdowns. So they just run the ball more by design.
And Shook is facing the Jets, who have been dog water, right?
Yep.
The opportunities, though, aren't going to be there. But if he gets the rushing attempts, it's interesting. I think I do like Stroud a little bit. He feels safer. But Bryce Young is in a do-or-die game. Bryce Young is very interesting to me.
I see him crumbling. I see all of Carolina.
I'd have to think about this more tomorrow, though. Initially, Joe, I would say Stroud. I'd say Stroud, Shook, Bryce Young, McCarthy, Dak, but I could see myself leaning in a different direction potentially tomorrow. I have Burden if he's healthy and Rome is out. Would you start him over Tet, Igbuka, or Fannin? I would start Burden over Tet probably.
I would definitely start him over Fannin.
But if you think that Bryce Young's going to have a great game, then you start Tet and you probably bench Fannin for Burden.
Yeah,
I think Joe's right about that. Who will Minshew throw to? Mahomes' favorite target was Rice.
Yeah, it still will be Rice. The plays haven't changed. It still will be Rice.
And Kelsey will get his fair share of targets. I think the player that is similarly devastated from this would probably be Xavier Worthy.
Yes.
I do think that will be something to keep an eye on. And Joe, just to build off of this, just a modicum more, right, is that when we look at Gardner Minshew here with the Indianapolis Colts, and we go to those game logs for the Indianapolis Colts back in 2023, I know it's a small sample size, but we're seeing a quarterback that can absolutely throw for 300 yards. Against Jacksonville one game, he had 55 pass attempts. And I know that's like a ceiling game. In that game, Michael Pittman Jr. had 9 receptions.
Yeah,
so,
Pittman's the closest one they had. That'd be to Rice for the comparison.
So that's why I mentioned
just good open in the middle of the field. So we buy houses.
Vikings,
again, it's
Bills. Chiefs. It's Bills for us. I could see many reasons for the Vikings and Chiefs, but I could see many reasons against the Vikings and Chiefs as well. And I don't hate the Saints. It just depends on the quarterback. In a tough matchup start-sit situation here, I think ETN Henderson are locks. I absolutely agree with you. I need to flex Swift, Judkins, Mike Evans, Sutton, or Devonta Smith. Well, Judkins is out.
That group, I'm going Evans.
It's going to be Evans or Sutton for me, and I think that I would lean Sutton with safer opportunities in a matchup that I think is going to be more back and forthy. So I'm on Sutton. Joe's on Mike Evans. I don't think either is a bad play.
Evans gives you a ceiling that's beautiful.
ETN zone versus Denver or Judkins. It's going to be ETN. ETN is way too hot right now to not start him, and Judkins has a very, very low floor. ETN's floor is very similar to Judkins, and if you see Judkins getting 2 touchdowns, sure, start him, but I don't see that.
I see him crashing the rookie wall 2 straight weeks with an under 2 yards per carry. That's the death nail of running back.
Kicker-wise, I'd keep my eye on the weather. I do like Little this week because of the amount of points that they have been scoring recently. I think that the New England kicker is a very intriguing play as well. But with the potential that Denver could always stop Trevor Lawrence, I see that more opportunities in the field goal department for Cam Little. So I would lean a little bit on Cam Little. I don't think any of these guys are bad plays. I think all these guys have the potential to get you plus 10 points. So I think that you're looking at a kicker that all these kickers, I think, can get you plus 10 points. It's just in what way that they do that and where the extra opportunities come in at. So let's dive into these deep dives that we saved from the top of the show down. Joe, clicking on that quick hit there. AJ Brown.
I was just putting it there so we know where we're going back.
Okay. All right. So I somehow beat the 1 seed. We're going to start with Steve's first. So I made it to the second round. Need 2 wide receivers for the week. Pickens, Diggs, Franklin, Worthy. The top 3 waiver pickups are Coker, Vele, and Slayton. So there are many things that you can say about all of these wide receivers. But I think one of the places that you need to start with is total number of pass attempts for the accompanying quarterback, right? And so when we look at it, we see that the Chargers have offered around 26 total passing attempts to quarterbacks over the last 4 games. So that's the starting number that you're looking at for a guy like Dak and opportunities, again, for guys like Pickens. When we look at Drake May and where his matchup looks like, you're looking at 34 possible pass attempts in that game for Drake May. Similar, like I said about Bo Nix. Bo Nix is looking at 36 possible pass attempts, and Gardner Minshew is looking at around 28. So taking that into consideration, you, as a starting point, you absolutely could consider benching George Pickens this week, knowing that those opportunities might not be as plentiful. But the opportunities for Pickens probably are going to be a little bit more valuable. So while the opportunities might not be plentiful, the opportunities could be more valuable. So then you look at it from the second perspective, is how are these teams against wide receivers in general, right? So we pull up the stats here on wide receivers, and I just want to see total receptions caught, and then looking at the targets, right? So when we come down to Diggs, I don't know why I did that. That was weird. When we come down to Diggs, we see Baltimore allowing 10 total receptions over the last 4 games to wide receivers, okay? Which is an interesting stat. It really was game script dependent at times. But it's something to be concerned about when you're looking at a low volume potential from a guy like Diggs. Then we come in and we look at Franklin, right? And what I said about Jacksonville's offering 15 total receptions, 22 total targets to wide receivers. So while Franklin's role on the team does change on a week-to-week basis, he's absolutely a guy based upon the stat pool that you have in front of you that you could rule into. The opportunity should be there for Bo. The opportunity should be there for Franklin. Is he a little bit of a dicey play? Sure. Because you don't know if you're going to get 8 targets and you don't know if you're going to get 3 targets. But I do think that when you consider that versus Diggs versus Franklin, it's similar to that capacity, right? So I think my first start out of those guys is Troy Franklin. It's a very uncomfortable start, but based upon the data that's in front of us, it's absolutely one of the plays that's on the slate. Now, like I said about Stephon Diggs, Joe, is ever since that game against the Jets, where everybody seems to be scoring against the Jets,
everyone scores on Jets.
Cincinnati, Giants, and Buffalo. 4 targets, 3 targets. So it seems that he's not going to get less than 3 targets. But that's not enough to make me want to throw him in my lineup. Then we look at Pickens, and yes, the total number of attempts going towards George Pickens this week might be less, but he has gotten 8 targets and 6 targets in consecutive games since CeeDee Lamb has been back. What he's done with those targets hasn't been enough, but the targets should be there. And while there's not going to be a lot of pass attempts on paper, Pickens is absolutely one of those guys that's going to get more targets than Diggs in a week. Even if Drake May were to project for 34 pass attempts, you could say that Diggs is probably still going to end up between 4 or 5, right? Mm-hmm. Unless the game script goes a different way. Then Worthy is one of those guys that, while Gardner Minshew is probably going to have a good amount of opportunities on the slate against Tennessee, one of the things to worry about with Tennessee is that they've only been allowing around 9 total receptions to wide receivers. And if we think over the last 4 games, now you look at that, who has Tennessee played? Well, they played San Francisco, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Seattle. You look at what happened in that Jacksonville game, they didn't have to throw the ball as much, but Jacoby Myers still had 6 targets. You look at the game against JSN. They stopped throwing the ball at one point in time too. JSN still had 10 total targets in that game. So the targets are going to be there in that matchup for Rashee Rice. While the total number of total receptions might be a little bit lower over the last 4 games, it's nothing that you could say that for a guy like Rashee Rice would be a problem. But it would be a problem for a guy like Xavier Worthy, who may or may not command targets from Gardner Minshew. Over the last 4 weeks, he similarly pings at a rate of Stephon Diggs. So you look at this and you say, on paper, Franklin and Pickens are your play from a potential volumetric standpoint. Then Diggs and Worthy are around the same, but with the potential higher volume for May, you have to roll with Diggs. So it'd be Diggs, Franklin, and Pickens for that data point. But then you look and you say, well, is Vele, Slayton, or Coker reasonable plays this week? Coker is. He's getting similar volume with touchdown upside. Then you look at Deshaun Vele going up against the Jets. He's the reason kind of why that I'm a little bit hesitant on Olave, because he's commanded 6, 5, and 8 targets against a team that can't stop anything. So I think I'm benching Diggs, even though the opportunity should be there. I'm benching Worthy, and I'm probably rolling with Vele, Franklin, and Pickens. I know it sounds really weird to say, but I do think that I see more touchdown upside out of Vele than I see with Diggs. How do you feel about that, Joe?
No, but I think you nailed it on the head. And the bottom line is they are looking at Vele under this new administration down in New Orleans. The Jets can't stop anyone to save their lives. And I'm not sure about putting Vele ahead of Pickens, but that's a debate. So it'd still definitely be Franklin and Pickens in your top two. But Vele in your flex, you can do a whole lot worse than that right now. Whole lot worse.
Jesse, down by 99 in a 2-week playoff. The 2-week playoffs are very interesting to me. We used to do that in one of our leagues. Big boom plays, need advice. Pick up Bourne with Pearsall being out. Pearsall's not yet out, but yes, I am absolutely picking up Kendrick Bourne this week if I need a wide receiver play. Again, similarly, Vele is also a very interesting wide receiver play for the.
I'd rather have Vele. He gives you more upside. Now, in terms of your running backs, which is your question here for the home run capacity, I'm going to go with Corum. And the whole reason I'm going with Corum is he's the only one I know is getting a touchdown. And Thursday night gets weird, but they have been consistently giving Corum the rock. Vidal is a hit or miss player. He could give you the explosion, but it's more in a JMO style where it's very low volume. He just does a lot with it. Algiers the one I'd look at the least out of that three group, even though he's probably going to be the best floor. So I would go with Corum because Corum has the chance of the upside and actual touching the ball blend. That's the best of them.
Okay, so here from a stat perspective, I think it's going to kind of paint a picture similarly to Joe here. I think Vidal's off the list for the reasons that I stated earlier about Vidal. With potential of only 17 total rushing opportunities, it's just not enough. It's not enough opportunities on the field. Can he break a long one like he did a couple weeks ago on the reception? Sure. But it's just not enough from a statistical standpoint to want to invest in it. Then you go to Corum. And Corum and Kyron, like I said earlier in the show, are projecting to do really well. But also there's going to be around Seattle on average has allowed 22 total attempts, right? You're going to get almost a 50-50 split. So if you give Corum 12 attempts and you give Kyron 12 attempts, Corum can both of them can absolutely do something with them. And the fact is that the problem is that Seattle's not giving up a lot of touchdowns. So where Joe said that Corum could be seen as getting a touchdown, I don't know if it's as certain for Corum. Where it really paints an interesting picture here is Algier. You guys know that I am not an Algier stan by any stretch of the imagination. You will not usually hear me that I want to start Tyler Algier. But where I find this to be interesting is that I absolutely think this is going to be a Bijan game. In order to end this game against Jacoby Brissett, they're going to want to run the ball. Both of the running backs for the Rams had a lot of success against Arizona. Quite frankly, almost every single running back that has ran up against Arizona has had success. Woody Marks, Jawar Jordan, like I said, 15 carries, 100 and some yards. You go back to Tampa Bay, and we have Bucky at 61 yards. Even Baker had 27 yards. You go back to the game against Jacksonville with Arizona, and Travis Etienne had 86 yards. So while I think that Bijan is a phenomenal play this week, for the same reason that I think Bijan's a phenomenal play, I think that Tyler Algier is actually very interesting because you can see a world where the Falcons are moving the ball down the field. And you can see a world where Tyler Algier does get into the end zone this week. For me right now, I do think that Tyler Algier and Corum are the two out of those three guys that I'm going with. And I could see myself landing on Corum on Thursday night for the reasons that I've said with Joe, etc. But I also could see myself landing on Tyler Algier. Am I comfortable with Tyler Algier? No. He is very likely a 0 or a 3, whereas Corum is more likely a 7 to a 12, right? So when you look at it, there is a lot of inherent risk for a Tyler Algier. But the matchup paints a picture that Tyler Algier could potentially be a better play. Like I said, with the total number of opportunities, right? Arizona's allowing around 26 total opportunities with 139 yards rushing over the last 4 games. Not a lot of touchdowns on average, right? If we look for the total number of touchdowns they've let up over the last couple of games, it's 4. But if you look for a total number of rushing yards, it's 559 over the last 4 games. Okay. And that's not like, that's a lot, but it's also against teams that like it's combined rushing totals. I could see a world where Algier does really good this week. I'm very uncomfortable with it though. Very uncomfortable with it. But I see a world where he could be good. Rumpel somehow beat the 1 seed last week, so I'm in the semifinals. Who do I start at flex between Shakir, Igbuka, Monty, and Christian Watson? So I don't think
Watson's out.
I don't think Watson is playing. And I do think, and I continue to believe, based on stat projections, that Shakir is a very low output wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
However, in a game
half PPR.
In a game against Cleveland, anything can happen, right?
Yeah, Cook can run for 300 yards.
This could be a game where you have 10 targets. It could be a game where he has 3 targets. I think he ends up somewhere in the middle, probably somewhere at 6 targets, 50 yards. So I see a floor of potentially 5 points. I see a ceiling somewhere in 15 for Shakir based on total number of opportunities. Igbuka, very similar. He has not gone below, I believe, 8 targets over the past couple of games. You look at the last 4 games, 8 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets. But he's been catching less than half of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is he going to catch more than that? Because is Baker Mayfield, it's not an Igbuka problem, it's a Baker problem. So if Baker, one more week of getting healthy, will these opportunities and targets be better? So for that reason, from that starting point, I am starting with Igbuka because I do believe that the opportunities will be better. Okay?
And I do think that Igbuka ends up being the final decision because Monty's so touchdown dependent in a situation where you're probably not getting him.
But again, the Steelers are pretty ass when it comes to their rush defense.
Not rushing touchdowns, though.
A lot of run. I know. I
they
said
let yardage, not touchdowns.
But I
think Gibbs rips them apart. Don't get me wrong.
It makes me curious. But for those reasons, I know this wasn't such a long deep dive for you, Rumpel. But I think that looking at these players, Igbuka's the guy that's getting the opportunities, but those opportunities
Igbuka's the answer.
Haven't been materializing. So for me, it's Igbuka, and I could see myself pivoting into Montgomery for the chance that he gets an upside touchdown, even though the Steelers haven't let up a lot of touchdowns. So that's where I feel about that. Josh, I need a quarterback, 3 wide receivers, 2 running back. You're not getting me not to start Jacoby Brissett. I've said it before and I've said it again. But the one thing about Drake May that's very good this week optically, okay, and I would have no problem starting Drake May. That's the thing. I have no problem starting Drake May in this matchup. One of the reasons to think about with that is that these opportunities are going to be similar, 34 total opportunities. But where I think Drake May does make his money is in that touchdowns on the ground department. And I do have a concern that maybe there won't be as many of those opportunities in this game. The Ravens love to play spoilers for teams. So there is a chance that they might get to May in this game and they might rattle him.
They're probably playing spoilers for them. It's them keeping their hopes alive in Baltimore.
Well, I know, but still, all in all,
Bob, you're right. Brissett's the answer we already went through. And quite frankly, your first 3 receivers.
But I wouldn't have a problem with either of them. Now, when I look at the 3 wide receivers, I do want to start Rice. I do want to start Lamb. So the question comes down to Igbuka and BTJ. In this discussion point, I could see a world where I would want to start BTJ. And I know BTJ, I know BTJ has not been trustworthy, but in a game that, again, projects to be very high volume, right? If Patrick Surtain isn't playing, Denver's allowing 20 targets and 13 total receptions over the last 4 games to wide receivers. If I project Jacoby Myers to do well, I similarly project Brian Thomas Jr. to do well. So I'm starting BTJ over Igbuka in the wide receiver spot. So it's Rice, BTJ, and Lamb for me. Then when it comes down to the running back, I'm absolutely starting Saquon and Henderson. There's no doubt about it. Okay.
That's right.
I don't even have to give you a stat to say that those 2 guys are going to project well this week. Saquon Barkley absolutely has one of the best matchups on the slate. So then it comes down to tight end and flex. Fannin and Warren's a tough decision.
Well, see, actually, I think his waiver wire's got a better answer than both of them. I'm going to pick up Waller off his waivers.
Fair. Okay. Waller's a fair discussion point to be had there. I could see myself dropping Jordan Mason in that regard. Then
that's what I would do. I would cut Mason and get Waller.
Then when it comes to your other flex, here are the guys that are in the discussion for the flex, okay? It's Woody, it's Igbukah, and it's Vele, okay? Mm-hmm. With a back-end Ja'Cory Krosky-Merit, depending on the health of Chris Rodriguez, okay? We'll talk about this more.
You got to cut someone to get Vele on here.
I'm saying you can
just go Woody and calling it a day.
You can cut 2 players there too. But again, I'm concerned about Woody's health and finishing power here. So I really do want to look at that injury. If it's projecting that Woody isn't going to play, I think it's reasonable to go out and buy Vele. Okay.
The Jets are so bad. Yeah, the Jets are so bad.
It's not the end of the world if you drop Monangai. It really isn't. Okay.
See, I would rather cut Mason or Fannin.
No. I understand that. I'm cutting Mason probably to pick up Waller.
Yeah, I know. And I don't need 3 tight ends, and I cut Fannin because I don't trust you.
I don't think I'd cut Fannin because, again, Fannin has a decent matchup against the Steelers in the last week of the season that I would want to take advantage of. But
wait, Watson's hurt. Cut Watson.
Yeah, you cut Watson. You cut Mason. You trim the fat there. You pick up Vele if you wanted to start him. You pick up Waller. I do think Vele is a potential better play at the flex position than Igbukah. The opportunities are going to be there pretty much similarly. If Shook is healthy, I think the opportunities are going to be fine, and I'd be very interested in starting Vele over Igbukah.
All right, we're going to speed mode to finish this thing out, Bob.
And now, and we can, and Josh, if you're with us tomorrow, we can talk about it more tomorrow. CC, in this regard, I'm on AJ Brown.
No doubt.
Okay? There's no doubt in my mind that AJ Brown's the guy I want. Even in a heavy run-oriented script, I can absolutely see AJ Brown exploding all over Washington. Start 2 wide receivers here. We answered this question Steve, we answered this question as a deep dive for you. Go back if you didn't get a chance to listen to it. It's Franklin, Pickens, and Vele for us. If you didn't get a chance to watch it just now, go back.
Hey, Quincy, the only way that Sanders is coming back to haunt me is if his dad is in charge of the operation.
Nino, running backs and wide receivers are CMC, Chase Brown, Harvey, Pacheco, Hunt, Chuba, Algier, Diggs, Jacoby, Higgins, and Byrne. Which wide receivers or running backs would you drop from Michael Carter and Coker? I'm dropping Kareem Hunt from Coker. And I'm dropping Pacheco from I might even drop Pacheco for Michael Carter, but I'm not playing Michael Carter this week, guys.
No. I think Carter is not worth playing or having.
Is Alec Pierce's value gone since Rivers is starter? Absolutely, and it's very disappointing. He's on my team, and I desperately need either Pearsall or Pierce to start and doing well, and I am in shambles. 2-part question here. I'm going to post my entire team in a second. I'm going to drop B-Rob Jr. Who else can I drop? And I think it would have been best if I had just done this from the beginning. Genty, Hampton, Neil Monangai, Monty, B-Rob, Nico Igbukah, Tet Burden, Devonta Smith, wide receivers, McBride, Fannin, PPR league. May is the quarterback. Need 2 wide receivers, two running backs, 2 wide receivers. McBride flex, Eagles D, Myers kicker. Love that. Okay, if I'm filling in the blanks here, I'm going to start at wide receiver because there's no question in my mind. Out of your wide receiver pool, Nico is in the number 1 wide receiver spot. Then coming down into it, I'm probably rolling into Devonta Smith.
I agree with that.
I think that Devonta Smith, while the matchup isn't juicy enough for him, and I worry about the targets, we're going to have Dallas Goedert games that take away from Devonta Smith.
Always happens.
That's absolutely going to happen. I think that Devonta Smith can be in for a bounce back this week.
I agree with that.
Then my flex is probably going to be Igbukah. If Burden is starting and Rome is out, I could see myself starting Burden over Igbukah But I think all in all that I'm probably going to land on Smith, Nico, and Igbuka as 2 wide receivers and a flex.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it comes to the running backs, you lean on Hampton.
Yeah.
He's going to get some volume. Again, I said it's projectably lower volume, but again, something cool can happen there for you. I'd watch that Neal injury. That Neal injury kind of sucked. I heard it was a hamstring, but it's the best matchup in terms of fantasy points per game for a player. If Devin Neal is out, projectably speaking, I think it would be interesting to keep your eye, and everybody asks for guys to keep an eye on. I think it would be interesting to keep your eye on who is looking like they're going to project as the starting running back for New Orleans. Because I think that the starting running back for New Orleans is going to be a valuable asset this week. It sucks that Devin Neal got hurt, because if it wasn't, then it would be Devin Neal, bar none.
Yeah,
but he's ruled out with a hamstring injury for the remaining of the Week 15 contest. Will he see it on Week 16? I don't know. I would tend to lean into Audric Estime at that point in time if that's the case.
That's a gross. That doesn't mean you lean more into Vele.
It would tell me to lean more into Vele too. It absolutely would. But the reason why I mention this is that the Jets have allowed 26 total rushing attempts to opposing running backs on the season. Okay. And over the last 4 games, if we go and we look at New Orleans, let's just take last week as an example, right? Neal went down early. Shook picked up the majority of those carries at 8. But there was 25 total receivers, running backs, and tight ends took in that game. You go then to Tampa, the game against Tampa, right? And Devin Neal had 19 total carries. There was a total of 13 carries. Shook had another 7 carries. So projectably speaking, right, if they're allowing 26 rushing attempts to running backs, and then you wrap in the total number to quarterbacks, where you're looking at quarterbacks getting around 14 rush attempts, those metrics are not always, palpable. But if you project that to be somewhere in the area of 30 total attempts, that's absolutely a backfield that I want to invest in the week over Monangai and over Monty. Even though the Monty matchup is pretty good, I worry about the Steelers projecting for no touchdowns to running backs. But again, that was Detroit as well, but Detroit got lit up for a couple of touchdowns. So it can always change from a week-to-week basis. But Hampton's starting, and I would be very interested if they're out there to speculatively pick up Audric Estime or Hall. And if I felt like rolling the dice and I saw that Audric Estime was going to dominate the carries, I would absolutely roll a guy like Audric Estime out there over a guy like Ashton Genty. I know that sounds like criminal to say, but I think in this day and age that it's there. Considering Jordan may not even start too, Jawar Jordan, is interesting. I think that Jawar Jordan is a guy.
Well, you just answered, Bob. Estime is who you would go with.
Estime is the other guy I'm looking at it.
So I would definitely go with Burrow over McCarthy. I think Burrow is going to rip apart a quit and depleted Dolphins secondary.
Yeah. Just take it as a defensive play. As long as you're still in the playoff hunt, you can pick up guys, right? We talked about this last week. Tingley. And on this one, BT, I am on Burrow. I think that JJ does throw for 2 touchdowns this week. Already got Achane and CD starting. Need help. 1 wide receiver, 1 running back, and 2 flexes. Chase Brown, Kyron, Henderson, Rice, Evans, Terry. You kind of answered the question here for us. You're absolutely starting Trevion Henderson. You're absolutely starting Mike Evans. So that takes care of running back 1, wide receiver 1. Your 2 flexes. Your 2 flexes are probably going to be Rice and Kyron. If you are uncomfortable starting Kyron in the matchup on Thursday, again, Thursday matchups do tend to favor running backs and tight ends. I do, but I'm not worried about guys like Puka, et cetera, on that front.
So your answers for the 4 players he needs to start are Kyron, Henderson, Rice, and Evans, and that's right.
Yeah, I think that's who I would lean into this week. But I do like Chase Brown. Dart or Baker this week, Joe? Where do you fall on that?
I am going to be on Team Baker. As you keep saying, a back and forthy kind of game. I like Baker in that. Can Naylor be started over Pickens? I don't think so. When you look at that game in Minnesota, giving the ball to Naylor late in that, it was mostly.
It wasn't even late in that. It wasn't even late in that. That he got. I believe he got the first touchdown.
It was he lost confidence in throwing the ball to J. Jeff that he never should have done. They're going to start taking those targets away from Naylor and give them back to J. Jeff. It's going to happen. So I don't think that Naylor is going to be this weapon. And Pickens is still top 5 in the league in yardage. So I would definitely stick with that.
Here's the thing. Naylor's not going to project for anything more than 5 total targets, and Pickens does project for a higher amount of targets. The efficiency that Naylor had last week was extremely efficient, and that was really weird.
So Bama Ace, we answered this one in depth earlier in the show. The answer was Brissett, and it felt weird.
I'm on Brissett for so many reasons. What's up? Let's get it. With Marks being as fragile as glass, Hendy and Kyron along with Gibbs are the best options that you have. Yes, I would agree with that. I think you're starting Henderson, Kyron, and Gibbs. Absolutely. I think that Gibbs is in for 3 touchdowns, probably 40 fantasy points this week. Also, I started BTJ and Myers last week with MHJ hurt. Also have Franklin, Mitchell, Coker on waivers, half PPR. I will find a way to get Franklin on my team this week, but for you, I probably wouldn't start him. I'd still start BTJ and Myers. Like I said, in a game that projects to be back and forthy. If you believe that Trevor Lawrence has a chance to get 3 total touchdowns, I think that both of those players are reasonable. You went with it last week. It worked out for you. Will Trevor throw for 6 touchdowns this week? Probably not. Gadsden, Parkinson, Waller, Theo, or Hawk. No tight end premium.
It's still Waller, guys.
The way I would order that would be Waller and Parkinson. I'd keep my eye. Again, Parkinson's a great play if Higbee's not coming back. But also the total number of opportunities that Seattle gives up to tight ends is a little bit weird. And because the Rams split that they distribute it fairly evenly most games because they play 2 tight end sets a lot. 8 total targets. If Colby only gets 4, I don't really see a benefit in that. But keep your eye on the quarterback situation. Do you guys feel like teams will keep kicking away from the Jets' kick returns like the Jags did? Probably. I've been using the Jets' defensive special teams for return yards and been doing pretty good all season.
Yeah, it's the only thing they can do. Why give them a chance?
Yeah. Stafford or Stroud this week, Joe?
I'm probably going with Stroud. I don't know. This is a tough one because both of them are obviously playing for something. Stafford has a much better offense, but it's Thursday. And when you look at it and say, hey, that game is pulling up here. That game's at Seattle. I'm probably going with Stroud because it's a road Thursday night game. I don't like taking road Thursday night quarterbacks.
So what I will say to this, the last time he played Seattle this year, he went for 27 pass attempts, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Every other game in the last 4 games, he's thrown for over 230 yards and at minimum 2 touchdowns. When you look at Stroud projects to do better in that market in terms of yardage, right? But not by a mile, right? The one thing about Stroud that's hard to project is his touchdown output. So what I would say
tends to be muted.
What I would say is that I think that it's an even distribution. If you want to start Stafford, knowing that they've already locked up basically that playoff spot, do they want to lock up that number 1 position? Or do you want to take Stroud, who's still fighting for a playoff spot? I think I lean a little bit into Stroud because I don't value the Raiders at all.
And that's the answer.
Quick follow-up on my deep dive. My second message must have gotten buried. All right. Does your Igbuka pick change if I'm already starting Mike Evans? I have Travion, Chase Brown, Amon-Ra, Mike Evans starting.
Not really. Because it's still the value.
Yeah, I mean, again, when we look at the total wide receiver room for that would be looking at in this situation with Igbuka, you're looking at possibly 11 total receptions, 16 total targets. I see it as being a bit higher than that. The last time, They haven't played Carolina yet this year. I see them as doing I see them both getting around 8 targets in this game. I think it's going to be interesting. If you'd rather not, then you can absolutely pivot out of Igbuka if you want to. I don't think Igbuka is a must start this week, but in certain lineup builds, he is a start. Am I crazy for considering Devonta Smith this week at flex in a very juicy matchup versus horrible Commanders pass defense? I don't think it's wrong to consider that, and I would start Devonta Smith, but just understand that he can project low if Dallas Goedert gets the majority of the carries that he would be getting. Now, it said hammy. It could be a hammy and an ankle. So it's not looking good for Devin Neal, and that's why I suggest maybe Audric Estime. I see Shook running more and using Hill Juwan with Neal out. That absolutely is another narrative that you could write. Shook could absolutely go off for 14 rush attempts. And that's the reason why Joe suggested that Shook could be a really valuable play this week, is that you might get running back numbers out of Tyler Shook and not necessarily have to worry about the passing numbers. But the matchup is so good on both ends, both passing and rushing, that rolling out Tyler Shook is like the you got to be crazy demon if you're doing it. But I think it's reasonable to think that he could be a better play than CJ Stroud or Matt Stafford this week. It's reasonable. Taysom may be a sneaky upside in desperation. He is never my sneaky upside in desperation. Zero Jettis or K9 questions. There was one, CC. There was one. But I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked based off of what we know, guys, because we do know that K9 was one of those guys, and J. Jeff similarly, that ebbs and flows. It ebbs and flows. Hey, Rabona, how's it going? How do we do in the best balls? Like I was saying earlier, and we're going to be back tomorrow, guys. We can talk more, so we're going to end the questions there, but we'll talk more tomorrow. We got, out of all of the entries that we got, now again, we did not 150 max any tournament.
No, we didn't.
Just to keep that clear. We did not 150 max every tournament. Our way of doing it is more picking your shots and getting percentages. We lost out on a couple of guys. You guys know we were really heavy on Bucky Irving, really heavy on Nico. They didn't perform well at the beginning of the season, got hurt. We were really heavy on Lamar in some circumstances. We were also really heavy on Stafford. We pulled that away slightly at the back half of the summer. We should have just leaned into that a little bit more. I have still one Best Ball Mania team moving forward, and we still have one Superflex team moving forward. So we got crushed by Trevor Lawrence. We got crushed in pods by Pitts, and we got crushed in pods similarly by some James Cook users. But we did sneak in a Best Ball Mania. We did sneak in a Superflex, and they scored really well last week, and they project to score really well. Again, the only weak position for us is that back half of the wide receiver pool, because, again, Carolina didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. And then the tight end position for the one non-Superflex team has Kincaid and Hunter Henry. So we really do need a ball-out performance from Kincaid. But thankfully, the Superflex team had Goedert and McBride along with Christian McCaffrey. So that's set up to be pretty good. But we'll talk more tomorrow. And also, guys, tomorrow, hopefully we can get in a little bit of best ball playoffs for you. Knowing that the season is winding down, we'll pull up a couple best ball playoff tournaments and share with you about what our early looks are ahead for that. So we'll be with you again tomorrow, Wednesday at 3:45. We'll answer any questions that comes in, and we'll also look at some strategies that you could put into place with some of the early best ball teams that are coming out there, both on DraftKings and on Underdog. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Local